Welcome to TV Africa News. This is Africa Today. My name is Najima Lima, but first are the headlines. Ghana deploys military in the volatile Volta region ahead of election. Kabore's party fails to clinch majority parliamentary seats. South Africa welcomes investors to Africa's energy event in 2021. Uganda opposition politicians warned. Now the news in detail. Uganda's President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni has condemned protesters and warned opposition politicians who he said mislead the youth to get involved in violence. He said this while addressing the country on Sunday about the violence sparked by the arrest of musician turned presidential candidate Bobi Wine, whose real name is Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu. Police said 54 people died during the protests nearly 2 weeks ago. The president said that the idea that there would be riots if Mr. Kyagulanyi was arrested must never be repeated. No politician is untouchable, Mr. Museveni said. The president claimed some political players had paid gangs that had declared parts of the Kampala capital ungovernable, attacking uniformed police officers on patrol. He condemned people who were filmed attacking law enforcement officers and people dressed in yellow, the ruling party color. Mr. Museveni said this would never happen again because the perpetrators had tested the consequences of playing with fire. The president said the original mistake was that the presidential candidates violated coronavirus prevention restrictions on crowds with impunity. He also extended condolences to Ugandans who lost loved ones during the protests and said the government would compensate the families. Bobi Wine is looking to unseat Mr. Museveni, who has ruled the country for 34 years in the January 2021 elections. Moving on to Ghana. Ghana Army has been deployed to the Volta region in preparation for the presidential election on December 7th. The Volta region is mainly seen as the opposition stronghold. Local leaders have cried for, lamenting that this will lead to fear and intimidation to the local voters. The Volta Regional House of Chiefs, together with the opposition NDC, is now calling on government to withdraw the military from the region. The government, on the other hand, has maintained that the deployment has been done in most vulnerable places to prevent terror attacks. They further dismissed that the deployment is politically instigated. The Ghanaian government deployed military after September violence by the secessionists from the western Togoland. The latter, who demand the creation of an independent state between Ghana and Togo, then set up roadblocks, attacked police stations, and kidnapped members of the security forces. Moving on, despite winning the much-hyped presidential elections, Burkina Faso ruling party for the elected leader, Roch Marc Christian Kabore movement, Do People MPP, fail to clinch majority of the parliamentary seats in the just concluded election. The Electoral Commission announced that the ruling party only obtained 56 seats and therefore does not reach the absolute majority of 64 seats out of a total of 127. Kabore's party, which won the recently concluded election in the first round with 57.87%, can however obtain this majority through a coalition with other minor allied parties. Political analysts now point at possible union between Kabore's party and the New Times party that belongs to current Minister of Transport, Dabigul, which supported his candidacy. Moving on to Ethiopia, Shak in Sudan's Hamdite Refugee Center is offering free communication services for Ethiopian refugees. It's just a small gesture allowing the refugees to connect with family and friends at home, thus providing badly needed relief at such trying times. A sign posted outside of the Shak reads, "Restoring family links." The phone and messaging service has been set up by the International Committee of the Red Cross and the Red Crescent. The refugee center in Hamadite is filled with some 30,000 refugees. Most of them have fled with a few belongings and clothes on their back, escaping the conflicts between leaders of the northern Tigray region and the Ethiopian Federal Forces. More than 43,000 refugees have crossed into Sudan since fighting broke out in Tigray on November 4th. UN High Commissioner for Refugees Filippo Grandi said as he visited Sudanese camps this week. In our business news today, Africa Oil and Power AOP is set to mobilize the Pan-African investment community ahead of its 5th annual AOP 2021 conference and exhibition, which unites key stakeholders across oil, gas, power, and downstream industries to ring in a new era of African energy growth. Under the theme, Invest Without Boundaries, AOP 2021 represents the premier platform for accessing the entire African energy value chain and fostering dialogue on bankable investment opportunities, the energy transition, industrialization, regional business, and economic transformation across the continent. As nations and investors gear up for the implementation of African Continental Free Trade Area, which will be implemented on 1st January 2021, AOP will promote investment across African and international borders and a strong post-COVID-19 economic recovery based on sustainable energy development. Let's take a very quick short break. We will be right back. Welcome back. You're still watching TV Africa News, the right to know. Now moving on in our health news today, progress in eliminating malaria has stalled in recent years, the World Health Organization said Monday, with more than 400,000 people once again estimated to have died from the disease last year. In its World Malaria Report 2020, the WHO said progress against the mosquito-borne disease was plateauing, particularly in African countries bearing the brunt of cases and deaths. In 2019, the global tally of malaria cases was estimated at 229 million, a figure that has been at the same level for the past 4 years. Meanwhile, the once rapidly falling death toll has effectively come to a standstill in the last 2 years. After steadily tumbling down from 736,000 in 2000, the disease claimed an estimated 411,000 lives in 2018 and 409,000 in 2019. A better targeting of intervention, new tools, and increased funding are needed to change the global trajectory of the disease and reach internationally agreed targets, the WHO said. In our sports news today, Uganda's last attempt to make the Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations ended in disappointing fashion, but with heads held high. Identical 1-0 victories for both Uganda and Cameroon took the two-legged second-round tie into a penalty shootout, which the former lost 5-4. There aren't survivors in terms of playing staff from that Corps team that even the villain Paul Wheeler could have easily forgotten where he placed his 12-yard stick. Yet another opportunity to appear at the AFCON, which also doubles as the Under-20 World Cup qualifying tournament, presents itself today. Coach Molly Biekwaso's team must beat Kenya in a semi-final to reach the CECAFA Under-20 Championship final in Arusha, Tanzania. That will be enough as the top two teams qualify for Mauritania 2021. My primary target is to see that the team reaches the final of this tournament, Biekwaso told the FIFA website before the tournament kicked off. The Under-20 side have flip-flopped. They started with seeing red in a goalless draw with South Sudan before a 6-1 vote of Burundi, with braces from Ivan Bogere and Isma Mugurusi effectively barring the struggles of the opening day. Biekwaso will be hoping for the same against the Kenyans, who topped Group C with wins over Ethiopia and Sudan. Now, before we end our bulletin, let's take a recap of our top stories. Ghana deploys military in the volatile Volta region ahead of election. Kabore's party fails to clinch majority parliamentary seats. South Africa welcomes investors to Africa's energy event in 2021. Uganda opposition politicians warned. That was the news on TV Africa. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned, more programming coming your way.